Imagine a military coup, but instead of generals in crisp uniforms, picture drug traffickers in expensive suits. Instead of seizing the national bank, they seize the entire cocaine trade. This isn't a crime thriller plot. This was real. And for one terrifying period in the 1980s, it was the government of Bolivia. I'm Ibnul Jaif Farabi, and this is Flashpoints, the wars that shaped us. Bolivia in the late 70s was a perfect storm. A young, ambitious army officer named Luis Garcia Meza had risen through the ranks, dreaming of power. At the same time, the country's vast, remote coca fields were transforming. What was once a traditional leaf for chewing was now the raw material for a booming cocaine empire, feeding the insatiable demand from the United States. The traffickers, led by a notorious kingpin named Roberto Suarez, had unimaginable wealth but needed protection. They needed the army to look the other way. And Garcia Meza? He needed money and muscle to execute his coup. A devil's bargain was struck. On July 17, 1980, just as a democratic election was about to be certified, the pact bore its violent fruit. Garcia Meza's forces moved in. But these weren't just soldiers. They were aided by a private army of European fascist mercenaries and, crucially, by the narco-traffickers' own gunmen. They stormed the Congress. Democratic leaders were arrested, tortured, or forced into exile. The cocaine coup was a success. For the first time in history, a narcotics syndicate wasn't just bribing a government. It was the government. The new regime was a caricature of brutality and corruption. The Minister of the Interior was actually a convicted drug trafficker. Key military posts were given to men whose loyalty was to the Suarez cartel. The state's primary export became cocaine, with military planes used for trafficking. Political opponents simply disappeared. The world looked on in horror, but Cold War politics complicated things. Some in Washington initially saw Garcia Meza as a bulwark against leftists, turning a blind eye to the narcotics flowing from his country. But the stench was too strong. Within a year, even the Reagan administration had to cut ties, labeling Bolivia a pariah state. Garcia Meza's narco-state was as chaotic as it was cruel. The various factions, soldiers, mercenaries, traffickers, soon began fighting each other over the spoils. The economy, aside from the illegal one, collapsed. Public revulsion grew. Strikes and protests became constant. The international pressure became a stranglehold. Just over a year after he seized power, isolated and despised, Garcia Meza was forced to resign. He fled, but his legacy of poison remained. It took Bolivia years of struggle to rebuild its democracy from the rubble he left, a democracy forever wary of the seductive, corrosive power of drug money. This story hits me on a personal level. Coming from Bangladesh, I've seen how fragile young democracies can be, how the shadow of military power always lingers. But the Bolivian case is a chilling extreme. It shows that the threat to a nation isn't always a foreign army or an ideological enemy. Sometimes, the most dangerous war is an internal one, where the institutions meant to protect the people are auctioned off to the highest bidder. The cocaine coup wasn't just a battle for political control. It was a war for Bolivia's soul, a war between civic identity and pure, predatory criminality. The traffickers may have lost their grip on the palace, but the scars of that war, the normalized violence, the corrupted institutions, that battle continued long after. For Flashpoints, I'm Ibnul Jaif Farabi. This episode was produced by Light Knot Studios. Find more deep dives into the conflicts that define our world at https://www.lightknotstudios.com.